All right, we're ready.
Good morning. So today we're going to discuss for our group project the topic of culturally responsive teaching. So to start with, we're just going to do some brief introductions. I am Julia Aguilar Maston. I work for a local nonprofit in childcare subsidy, um, and I have been in the field for approximately 6 years.
Hi, I am Katherine Caraballo, and I am a fifth grade teacher here in New Hanover County. I've been in the school system for 10 years. I've been teaching as a lead teacher for 6 years.
Hi, everybody. I am Janina Holt, and I currently work for Early Head Start here in Guilford County. I've been in the field for a long time, maybe like 19 years, right out of high school. But I've been teaching with Head Start for the last 9 years.
Nice. So
So
for starters, I think that we're all very much qualified to speak on this topic. I mean, not only were we part ourselves of the system as students when we were children, but we're also now professionals in the field who are pretty seasoned. I mean, even me, I think I'm the one that has the least experience. I still have some experience under my belt, and I think that we have such different perspectives to speak from. So I kind of work behind the scenes in a less traditional setting of early childcare, right? In childcare subsidy. And then we have Katherine who works with still early education, but towards the top end of it, right?
mm-hmm.
And then we have Janina who is also working in Head Start. So I'm really excited to discuss this with you
It
guys.
should be good. I guess so we are, as Julia said, talking about culturally responsive teaching. And we chose 4 different articles to kind of talk about. The articles are Julia, can you tell me one of the articles? Because
Yeah.
and I will edit this, guys. Don't worry about it. So
Yeah, no worries. Let's see. So,
sorry,
based off of our matrix.
yeah, I couldn't pull my matrix up. I'm sorry. So that's
Me,
Oh,
why.
no worries. I got it. So, the first one that I see here is titled "Who's in My Classroom? Teachers Preparing to Work with Culturally Diverse Students." So that's the first one. We also have "Getting to Know You, Sharing Time as Culturally Relevant Teaching." We also have culturally relevant teaching in PDS, talking about race in a early childhood setting. And lastly, we have, but that's just good teaching, the case for culturally responsive pedagogy.
Perfect. So I guess the first question I think that we said we wanted to sort of just talk about is what is
Mhm.
culturally responsive teaching, like maybe to each of us. So
right.
I don't know do you want to start, Janina?
I
Or do you
can, I can.
okay.
So I guess, yeah, no, it's fine. I guess we'll start with the generic version or
Mm-hmm.
dictionary version of culturally responsive teaching, which is using students' customs, characteristics, and their own perspectives and experiences as tools to better educate the classroom.
Mm-hmm.
For me, with the early childhood perspective, it's more so uh getting the families involved to create that atmosphere, because when children are 3 and 4, you know, they're bringing their culture in, but they're not necessarily able to talk to you in fidelity about what that is and what that looks like. And you want to be careful with making assumptions by what you may see,
Yes.
with children. So for me, like I said, in the early setting, it's more so connecting with the parents and the families and getting information and seeing how, their culture, their customs, and things that they do in the home would, manifest in the classroom, and how you can use that to serve as, a window to a different culture and education.
Yeah, and that's really important because, as you know, even as a like upper elementary teacher, the parents are a huge resource for being able to,
Yes.
you know, integrate, like have a culturally responsive like classroom, because they're the ones that are going to be giving you all the like the history. And so it's always a good idea to like really speak to the parents at the beginning of the year, very much at the beginning of the year, and just kind of have a conversation with them, even if it's just sending a questionnaire with all kinds of questions about like their family life and their culture, just so that you understand where they're coming from. So that's, yeah, I think that's very much like through. I love to see that that's a through thing, like from like tiny like kiddos to like the upper
The
elementary
upper
ones. It's
grade
really
level.
implementing. And for me, I know that like what Janina said, the technical term for the, you know, what they say culturally responsive teaching is, and it is that. um and it's like, for me, I think it also empowers students because it gives them that sense that they are seen in a classroom. So it empowers them, like intellectually. It helps them a lot emotionally.
That sense of
Because,
belonging. Yeah.
yeah, because it's like they have knowledge and skills that they can share. And so when you use that in your classroom, they have a sense of like, oh, like I have like a say, I have a voice in this classroom. And
Yeah.
that's huge for them,
Empowerment.
especially as they get up. Like, I think, and I love it if it was something that was in every grade, it would be so great, because it would just be something that would really kind of engage them in the classroom.
Yeah. Yeah, and just to kind of piggyback off of what you guys discussed, because you guys defined it so well. So my and just to kind of add to it, right? This
Yeah.
isn't the definition, but I definitely can speak on like the aspects that sort of add to the definition of culturally responsive teaching. So I think that one of the main things that I really appreciate about this topic, and just about our field in general, really, but specifically on this topic, is the holistic aspect of it. I mean, what a great way to look at your resources. Who is the ultimate resource? We are
Hmm.
people, human beings. And I love that culturally responsive teaching, it doesn't it's one of the few things in our field, not few, but one of the main things in our field that really captures the human aspect of education.
Yes.
And we can't lose that, right? We can't lose that because it's feeding directly into our community. So we do have to keep that human aspect to it. We do have to look around and look what the individuals that are making up those classroom settings, both from the family perspective and from the children, right?
Hmm.
So, and I love that my favorite aspect of this entire field is uh, equipping these children with tools that they will carry on for the entirety of their lives,
Absolutely. Yep.
tools that will greatly impact their development as human beings
Yeah.
from the very beginning. So, you know, just I really love the holistic view of it all. I really love that the whole point of cultural teaching, culturally relevant teaching, is just never forget how empowering it is to be a human being, interacting with other human beings and just being good to each other. Like,
Yeah.
that's really the general
Absolutely.
aspect I get from it. Um and I think that's really important in today's society where we're so connected with electronics and technology, which is wonderful. I love the internet. It is such a great resource. But just like in the classroom, we have to know how to use those tools, right? And children aren't born with that knowledge. So it's up to us to ready them, prepare them, show
Mhm.
them, be the example of how these tools can be implemented, not only in the classroom, but as people. So yes, I'm really excited about this topic. So how what else do we want to discuss about this?
So one of the things, and quite a few of the articles that we read, I love how the turn in culturally responsive teaching has gone from on the student to on the teacher, right?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
it's not up to the student really, right? It's up to the teacher. And
Yes.
one of the things that I really liked was how quite a few of those, and I think who is teaching, I think is that the article that in the
Who's
in
in
the
my
classroom,
classroom?
who's in my
Who's in my
classroom.
classroom? Yep.
And
The
at that,
Miranda Lynn and Ellen Bates
yes, that one
article.
focuses on obviously who's in your classroom, but what are you as a teacher doing for those kids in your classroom, right? Because we always talk about, I remember a professor of mine saying, like, we should be asking who is not represented in what you're teaching. Who's not represented, not who are you representing, but who is not, because mostly you're not representing a lot of the marginalized groups. And so a lot of the turn that culturally responsive teaching has taken, and they're calling it, one of the articles that we had has like a new form of pedagogy they're talking, which turns it on like the teacher, right? It's like, what are you doing to learn about your kids, right? What are you doing to connect with those?
They're the vehicle to all the information. So start there. Yes, I fully agree with that.
And I think it just speaks towards the intentionality of the teacher, because it's not just about checking boxes. You know, every year you're seeing a new group of children, a new group of families, and it's always changing. So you can't necessarily do what you did last year. It may work, but it may not. So, you know, what steps, you know, what are your strategies into making sure, like you said, that you are making sure that these marginalized groups are represented?
Yeah, and I think it was in that culturally relevant teaching in a PDS article. Was talking about it, calling it culturally sustained pedagogy. That's the turn it's taken.
To ensure that you're always, you know, being thorough. With with including all the different cultures that are in, you know, within your group. And so I think teachers sometimes they are, I don't know, it's easy to get wrapped up in all the other to-dos. That is one of the things that's kind of easy to leave out. But ultimately, if you kind of nourish that first and pay attention to that first, it will actually make all the other to-dos much easier.
100%.
Right?
If you're one that's planning this ahead of time, it makes everything a lot easier. Absolutely.
It does. And the parents and families, and I'm just so big on family engagement, but once they see that what you're doing is important, they'll help along the way. You know, we all know, especially with early childhood, parents are the children's first teachers. And if they see that, you know, what we're doing in school correlates with what's going on at home, they'll help you. They'll be your biggest supporters. And so, you know, and like the last article, that's good teaching, you know, when we can collaborate and get everybody involved. To reach a common goal, that's good teaching. So I think that that's very important.
It is.
And that also brings me into another point where it's also really important, again, to focus that what would be the word, like placing that emphasis on the teacher, because they're the ones, just like Janina said, right? They set the tone. You can set the tone of clearly communicating to the parent in a way that they're going to understand, and in a way that's going to resonate. Hey, I would love to hear your thoughts. I would love to pick your brain. I would love to express to you that I am fully involved and you have my attention. Your child's needs, they have my attention. So like just prioritizing that and showing to the family, like, I'm a resource. I'm definitely here to help in whatever way that's going to look like, in whatever language that's going to look like, you know, and just whatever tone or whatever it is, right? So I think that's another way that we can like really emphasize, like, it's not fully up to the teacher, right? Because it is a collaborative effort. But the teacher does have that huge responsibility and honor, right? To get that going. And what a privilege it is to be involved with the family in such a way, such a unique way, right? So I don't know. It's about the holisticness again, right? Where everybody plays a part.
Right. And having said that, I'm gonna kind of go on to that second question that I had when and I think it was
Yeah.
from um I think it was from the article that Janina just mentioned, that that's good teaching. I think it's from that article where Billings asks or says there's so little good teaching in like classrooms that are populated by like African Americans specifically. And my question is, why do we think there's so little good teaching found in classrooms populated by marginalized groups?
Mm-hmm.
And mainly, I mean, honestly, mainly African American groups,
Mm-hmm.
because there's such a big gap between our like marginalized, our like white students and our like Black students in terms of like proficiency,
Right.
and in terms of
Mm-hmm.
things like that. And so thinking about that is what we were just talking about. I think is because the emphasis has not ever been about learning to teach them, if that makes any sense, right? Because every kid is different and coming from a different background. How you learn is 100% different than
Mm-hmm.
other kids. And I'll bring in an old thing that I remember from a different class that I had, that we were talking about how there was a study done about how kids learn, and how from coming from different homes, coming from like a predominantly, like an African American home, coming from a Hispanic home, coming from a white home, how every single one of those kids learns in a different way. Like a lot of our
Uh-huh.
kids coming from like an African American home are really independent, and they really like to do things. They're like
Mm.
very independent in a way. And so like when they're tiny and they get into like the lower levels, when they're asked questions that are supposed to be like generalized questions, like where is this, or
Right.
who is this character, they tend to just tell these awesome stories. Like they go off on a
Right.
tangent, and they connect everything to themselves, like to their culture and whatever. And
Mm-hmm.
as an education system, we say no, that's not how you answer that. We're like, you have
Right.
to answer it this
Yeah.
way, like blah blah
Mm-hmm.
blah blah. But you're like, but then when they get older and you want them to do that, because when they go older, what you want them to do is have like open discussions, right, and talk about and connect it. You've already taken that out of them. Like
Yeah,
that's
you've
not,
stunted
you
that.
stunted
Yeah.
them. Like
Yep.
they no longer know, like they can no longer, their skills are
They
not
didn't develop
there.
that skill.
No, and that's such a great skill. And I think it comes to that, what we're saying, like this, the just having, put, making it a part of the way we teachers or educators learn how to teach,
Yeah.
is like, that's
Yes.
important. Let's take what we can from that and use that. um and
Yes.
they can do both. Like you can have them talk and have the discussion, and then also teach them, like write this, like
Right.
write this down this way, without like stunting that growth. So I think that's the main reason there's little.
It's the balance. It's the balance between the direct instruction,
Mm-hmm.
right and wrong, and then just allowing them to have the ability to just think
Yeah.
and
Yes,
express
100%.
and create and use their imagination. And I know that, in a world where everything is based on, right and wrong, uh
Mm-hmm.
percentages, what were the results, what does the number say, how does the
Scantron
data
tests,
read, yeah, right and
standardized
wrong,
testing.
Yeah.
standardized, and everything is to a standard. It's like sometimes there's no room for the thing
Right.
that
For
actually
individuality.
to actually give children, young children, and even older children what they need to actually excel and be able to pull from the different parts of their brain to make things work.
Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, even with educators, and I hate to say this, but I like to call us like the ultimate control freaks, because it's like my classroom, my lesson plan, the way.
Mm-hmm.
And when we start to truly, walk into that culturally responsive piece, you have to change who you are,
It's hard.
and
Mm-hmm.
you're learning.
Yes.
You go from
It's
the teacher
difficult.
to the student,
Yeah.
and it's like, oh gosh, I'm learning from a 5-year-old
Right.
or a
Yeah.
8-year-old,
Yeah.
100%.
or a
That's
10
an
year old.
excellent point, though.
But
Never
you
stop
have to
being
be
a
willing to,
learner. Yeah.
mhm,
Yeah.
a
You,
learner.
you have to give
And
up control, and that's so
you
difficult.
Yes. Oh
do,
my
and you have to
gosh.
give up
Yes.
control.
That's a
And like I
great
said,
point.
we spend our whole summers, we're setting up bulletin
Yeah.
boards, and we're putting this together because this is going to be like this and this is going to be like that. And it doesn't always work like that. And so we
Mm-hmm.
have to be willing to give up that control and
Yeah.
just go with the flow.
Yeah.
And
that,
and I mean, it's a challenge within itself.
Yeah.
And sometimes it may not look like to our superiors like we're excelling because we
Right.
don't have those concrete numbers.
Mhm.
So
Right.
that's a fear too, because you don't want to be viewed as the classroom that they're not working or they're not learning
Right.
because you can't document it or you can't bottle it up to
Right.
show. But I think we just have to be, like you said, forever learners and not afraid to learn from a child.
And I think what you just said, to piggy off on Janina, that's one of the hindrances for people with the education in the classroom. They're afraid, like this culturally like responsive teaching is giving up the reins of the, like, you're
Yeah.
the facilitator in
Yeah.
this situation. They're teaching you everything, and
Yeah.
you're kind of going
Mhm.
with that and taking that to, like, teach, help to teach to everybody else, and they're sort of teaching each other. But then, yeah, that idea of that's going to have really good outcomes as they get older and they go on. But like
Yes.
at that point where you are as a teacher, you have this accountability that you have to give to people,
Yeah.
that will be
And
like,
that
well,
vulnerability.
yeah, and you have to give this
Yeah.
accountability to your superiors, right? The people in charge, the administration, to say, okay, yeah, the proficiency isn't there, but I know that they have learned something, and that's
Yeah.
gonna take them. So
Right.
yeah, I think that also might hinder people from, like, really just
Yeah.
allowing
Like
this to be
fully
something. Yeah,
engaging in absolutely.
I think so.
Yeah.
Absolutely, I think
I
that's a big
totally
one.
agree.
Okay, so
And we can't forget, like, when you turn that around and showcase that vulnerability to a child and say, "Hey, I'm gonna listen to you and I'm gonna hear out what you have to offer," that's incredibly empowering to a person
Yes,
of any age.
yes,
And the child may not showcase that they fully understand the power of that in that moment, but just like Catherine said, later on when they're adults, or maybe even in middle school,
hmm,
they're gonna have that moment where I've been practicing this. I've been practicing to
yeah,
be my authentic self because I was given the chance
yes,
to venture that by someone just asking me, "What do you think?
yeah,
What is your
exactly.
opinion?
Yep.
Where are you from? What language do you speak? What is your culture?" All those questions, they have to be asked for someone to
absolutely.
develop those
Yeah.
that piece of their identity. So it's just all so important. And one unfortunate piece about it is, though, and this is a whole different discussion, but it's also part of it, is that, like, it's also really unfair to place all of that on the educator.
Exactly.
That's
Mhm.
a lot.
Yeah,
That's a
absolutely.
tall order.
It definitely needs to be a collective response from the
Yeah,
school, it has to be a
that's what
way
I,
of
yeah,
doing things.
it needs to be like
Right.
this cultural responsive teaching needs to be the system, not, you know what I mean? Not like it should be what
Absolutely.
we're doing as a
Mhm.
whole educational
Mhm.
system.
That's why it should be a collaborative
Absolutely.
effect. A
100%.
collaborative, yeah, right.
That's good. So, with that being said, I guess
Yeah.
that segues us into the next discussion topic. And Julia, you might have to just make it work or think
Oh,
back to your classroom day. But in what ways do you guys personally engage in culturally relevant teaching?
I can answer
Or
that.
yeah,
Um,
okay, let's
Good
go.
well,
question.
a couple of things, and these are the small things that you do as you're working. Like, I unfortunately have, in this particular county, we have a scripted program, like a program we have to follow. But
Mhm.
I always find ways to do what I need to do. So one of the big things, and I think we talked about this earlier a little bit, is I try to find literature that is written by
The
own
books.
voices,
That's it.
by Black authors, by Hispanic authors, by Indigenous authors, by Asian. Like, I try to fill my library up with that, and I try to read books to them. Because even in fifth grade, let me tell you, those fifth graders love picture books. Love them so
Yeah,
much. So we read picture books all the time. And it's always by, and I try to be very cognitive about doing it, like very, like, purposeful on it. But it's really hard because, like, and I'll just put it out there. This is one of the critiques I maybe have or something, but like, the publishing industry does not publish, like,
yeah,
Mhm.
do
absolutely.
not publish as good. Like, I think I remember from like 2021, I think it was like 7, like 2% indigenous authors for children like were
Wow.
published, and like
Oh,
10% for Latinx and only like 9% for Black authors. Like that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like tiny, tiny, tiny percentage.
And you know what group has the most representation out of all the ones that you just listed? Farm animals.
Yep, farm animals. Yep, 100%. So it's one of those
Listen,
things.
I love my llama. Leave him alone.
I do love Llama Llama, but it's one of those. So I try to do the
But
book,
yeah,
and
you're
then
absolutely right.
I do like my poetry unit. Sometimes I will do so I have like a poetry unit that I do it. I'm gonna try to incorporate it this year with what I'm doing. But and this I didn't, it's not my original idea. I know I've seen it from other people that really do culturally responsive teaching. And I have my boy, like my kids bring in, especially my African American boys, hip hop. We do rap like clean, obviously, but
So,
like they're allowed to
Yeah,
bring in some
absolutely.
songs because that's poetry. And
yeah.
using that as a way for them to then really understand the poetry unit is like bringing in their culture and what they do
Make it
to like
And the
relevant.
what
art
we're
of
doing, making it
expression.
relevant.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah. So
Yeah.
little things like that. Like I'm still learning on this. It's something that it's a process. Like I think Julia said, we're all lifelong learners. I'm still learning how to do it and want to have like a completely, you know, culturally relevant like pedagogy and curriculum as much as I can. So, it's like kind of going in between all the stuff they make us have to do,
Right.
like living around all the things they need from us. So yeah. So that's my response.
That's amazing. If it's okay,
Julia,
I can speak
you got
next on
something for
this.
me? Yeah, you got something?
So let's see. So like I mentioned earlier, my role in the early education field is more of like behind the scenes setting. So I don't really connect directly with children. I connect directly with their parents, with their guardians. That's my point of reference into the family. So I do have to have that really strong connection with the parent or the guardian again. So my way of and actually for a little bit of extra context. So what that looks like is I constantly on the phone with them. I meet in person with them if necessary. Most of them like to do email. So I do have some sort of form of communication always between me and the parent.
Ongoing, yeah.
And so pretty much the way that I not try but actually do implement culturally sound practices into the work that I do is I just on it, and this is one of the reasons why I just love what I do, is because there's nothing better than entering into our intake room where
Yeah.
we host parents, and it happens to be like a Latinx parent or, someone who is a non-white person,
Yeah.
and I can literally see their face relax because I too am a person of color.
Yeah.
So I'm already like setting the tone of like, we're here. I get you. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
We're in a common, we share that common area, that common place. And so it's not fully alien, so we already have that familiarity. And so I just for actually, this is a great example. Right now I'm working with a new family who's from East Africa.
Okay.
And this woman barely speaks English, but let me tell you what, I got her child into early childcare.
There we go. Yeah.
How? I don't
That's
speak
it.
the same
Right.
language as her, but point is, I didn't give up. One way
Right.
or another, Google Translate, a translator,
Yeah.
something,
100%.
some way. There are endless resources that you can reach out, just as long as you don't give up.
Right.
Because I have
Right.
nothing, my culture has nothing in common with hers, but that doesn't matter.
Right.
Point is, I recognized that the need for somebody to not give up on her.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all it was. That's really all it was. And so I repeated
And
things as
keeping
much as
her
I needed
encouraged
to.
too as well, and not to
Sorry,
give up
guys.
on you on the process. So I think that's
Right. Yeah.
too. You know, families. You can only imagine what it feels like to be in a new country, in a new space where you don't speak the language,
Oh my
and
gosh. Yes.
how easy it may be to say, you know what, this is just not working, you know.
Yes.
But
Mm-hmm.
to have somebody like you available to keep them encouraged to say, you know what, we're gonna make this work, even if you only can get that, you know, across in a few words, you know, to keep them
Right.
encouraged is that's a big deal, and it's
Yeah, and
needed.
it's incredible. Like it's incredible. Like you may not speak the same language, and you may not come from the same culture, but both as human beings, we just want the best for that child.
Absolutely.
So technically, we're speaking the same language. So, you know, we just all had the best of intentions. I held her accountable as a parent and was like, hey, I know you don't speak a lot of English, but even though you don't, we have resources where we can go with you to the childcare center, do
Right.
the site visit with you, and we can translate some way, somehow. You know, like there's ways to get it done,
Yeah.
even if it's not the most traditional way.
Mhm.
So I feel like one of my superpowers, I would say, to enact that those culturally
Mhm.
relevant and culturally responsive practices is just always be flexible.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Always, always, always remain flexible, and just always be forgiving. You never know what's going on the receiving end of things. You
Yeah.
know, we're all people. We all have our own things going on. It doesn't matter where you're from, what age, it doesn't matter. So, yeah, it's cheesy, but just
I get it. I
from an
agree.
understanding point of view.
I mean, I think that's one of the advantages I have. I'm Hispanic, right? I'm Puerto Rican, and like I can speak to my um like my I can speak to my Hispanic families. Like, you know, I have
Mhm.
so many that come in that parents don't speak English, but I can
Yep.
communicate. So
Yes.
for me, I think that's a really good advantage for me as as a teacher, right? As an educator, I can make that connection with them. And I know how hard that is for some of my colleagues who can't. Like they
Yeah.
don't,
Yeah.
it's so much harder for them, you know, like
Yeah.
they don't know, it's tough. So yeah, like what
And that
Julia
can
was
be
saying, like
intimidating.
it is, it's just never giving up.
Yeah.
Like keep trying and do whatever you need
Yes.
to do yeah, yeah,
Yes.
that's a really good way
Yeah.
to,
Be
Yeah. Language
relentless.
barriers are different.
Yeah.
yes, they are. Yeah.
Okay. Let me see. Well, I guess I can give my way of. So I'm actually not very good. I don't want to say not very good, but it's hard to incorporate culturally relevant teaching into, you know, our day-to-day practices in the early classroom because of the curriculum. Right. The way the curriculum is set
Uh-huh.
up, it doesn't necessarily encompasses the culturally relevant piece. So you have to be, like that word again, intentional about making it work, right? And incorporating it into the curriculum. So our curriculum does do a lot of like incorporating the families, having them bring in items from home. While it doesn't necessarily specify the cultural piece, I mean, I just use that as my segue to kind of get the
Mhm.
parents involved and learn more and to create those windows and mirrors, as we say in the early
Oh,
childhood,
windows, mirrors, and
right?
sliding
Love
doors.
the
Good
windows and the
girl.
mirrors,
Yes.
right?
That's
And
one of
so,
my favorites. Yes.
yes, we do. I use that. So I guess I do. My big thing for me is parties. Oh my God, I love parties. I love parties and I love themes and give me a reason to dress up. And yes, I want to, you know, wear feathers because it's Thanksgiving and, you know, or whatever. It just give me a reason.
Engaging.
Yeah, just give me a reason to put on a hat, right? I'm okay with that. So I guess my biggest accolade or showpiece for culturally relevant teaching is like parties and events. You know, I'm always like, oh yeah, bring this in. Oh, we're celebrating this day. Did you know it was National Language Appreciation Day? Who speaks a different language? You know,
You're
so
all about celebrating.
let's celebrate. So I am all about
Yeah.
celebrating and just throwing parties. That's my biggest reason. I love a color scheme. Oh, we all wearing red shirts tomorrow. Don't forget your red shirt. And I'm the
Oh,
one
and they get
packing
so
the
amped
extra.
up. The kids get
Yeah,
so
I'm
excited.
packing the extra red shirts in my bag just in case somebody forget a red shirt. We're not leaving
Yeah.
out, right?
Mhm.
And so I guess that's really my my big contribution to the culturally relevant piece in the classroom. But like you said, forever student. So I'm always learning. I'm always taking in like new ideas, new ways to do things. And yeah, that's my piece. The next, and I think this is our last
Well,
little.
Janina, and I'm going to say really quick,
Oh,
you said
okay, yeah,
something
yeah,
earlier,
absolutely.
I'm sorry, that goes with what you're saying, how you love to celebrate. And you talked a little bit about you had the story about your daughter, and you talked a little
Oh
bit
yeah,
about how, yeah, and so like that story where you said that the reason she felt the way she felt was because she'd seen like the trauma and the tragedy of like
yeah.
the African
Yes.
American story, and then like what you want, and this is, yeah, this is part of that, I think, culturally relevant teaching is, yes, that's important to know the history, absolutely, and we want to know the history because we don't want this repeated, we want to do that, but also to celebrate the greatness of being
Mm-hmm.
Black, the
Mm-hmm.
greatness of
Of
being
your culture,
Hispanic,
of whoever
the
you are.
greatness of
Yeah.
being
Mm-hmm.
indigenous,
Start changing the rhetoric.
yeah,
Yeah.
change it. And I
Mm-hmm.
mean, we're going to talk about that because that's important, and it, obviously has ramifications today, all that. But we also want to
Right.
tell them, but you are this amazing, powerful being that can
Yes.
change things, and you can make this
Yes.
different. So I really loved
Yeah.
when you said that earlier, about that.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
That's good. That's right on time. That's right on topic for what I was getting ready to go into, which was talking about race in the early childhood education and how it's ignored. And I was explaining to the ladies earlier, my daughter, who was 7 or 8, it was Black History Month, and she had to do a African American like project, and my sister was helping her, and my daughter's like, I don't know, I'm not even African American, why would I know? And I'm like, oh my, I, the culturally relevant early childhood teacher extraordinaire, forgot to tell my daughter she was Black. Yes, I did. And so it was just like I didn't think about it. I didn't think about it, and I thought she knew. I don't know how we missed it, but she missed it. And the first time she was in first grade, she experienced, or the knowledge, the connection, the educational piece about being Black, being African American, was the story of Ruby Bridges and how she wasn't allowed to go to school, and like all the mistreatment of Black people. And so at 8 years old, she's like, well, I don't want to be Black because I'm really not that Black. I'm brown, and
I don't want to be associated with the
she didn't want to be
negativity of my
associated with the
history. Yeah.
negative aspects or the negative history of African
Yeah.
Americans. And it was sad because it's like it's so much good history. It's so much rich history, but
But that's what went straight to the top.
that's what went to the top. And it not only was it a wake-up call for me as a parent, on a personal level, it was a wake-up call for me as an educator too, to make sure that we're talking about race and the positivity of race, so that the first time these children hear about it or learn about it, it's not in first grade or fifth grade, when we're talking about history, and it's talking about like the negative aspects of some of the things that happen along with race. So that
Yeah,
was that was my
because you
story.
talk about balance, it's not balanced out. Like a lot of the
It's
times when we
not.
talk about Black history, we don't talk about, like, and rightly so, we need to talk about the stuff that happened because that was not right, and we need to teach our kids, right, this was
Right,
not right,
absolutely.
and it's still a thing that affects us today. But we also need to be like, but listen, you came from kings and queens, like you were like they like, I wish
Absolutely.
that when we balance that the history, we
Yeah.
also told them about their history, like your
Yeah.
history.
Mhm.
Like you come from
You
African
can't
kings
cherry
and
pick. You
queens,
got
you
to
come
tell
from
the
this
whole
No,
story.
incredible
exactly.
culture,
Don't
like
cherry pick.
I wish
Yeah.
I wish that's how we did it. So like we balance like this, we talk about why, this happened to like the African American community, and like where you came, like just giving them the whole picture so that they don't have only that negative like connotation
Yeah.
to themselves. That's awful to
Piece
think,
of it. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually have a quick anecdote, Janina, that your
Okay.
story reminded me of. So I don't know about y'all's experience in elementary school, but I grew up in Henderson, North Carolina.
Oh, I've heard
Vance
of that.
County. Very, very small town. Very, very country. So, just setting the scene, right? I was the only brown kid probably in the school aside from my brother. So the Hispanic community was I mean, we didn't have a lot of Hispanics yet in the community. My family and I were one of the very, very early families. And so I just vividly remember sitting in every class, in every classroom, and thinking and othering myself, right? Because I'm like, I can't relate to anybody. I can't relate to the teacher. I can't relate to my peers. I'm getting nothing. I'm getting no sort of representation here. Not in our books. Our school system doesn't talk about being Mexican or Hispanic or the Chicano history, nothing.
Yeah.
So I really, really grew up like sort of suppressing that part, the Mexican side of my Mexican American identity. I didn't really get to explore it because it was stunted, right? There was nothing or no one that was asking me about that side of my identity. So, I mean, it just goes to show that it is super, super important to ask those seemingly obvious questions about children's identities, you know?
Right.
Because they're little and they may not know to ask those questions themselves, you know? And so it's up to us to be intentional with the things that we're saying and the questions that we're asking and the messages that we're sending, right? That's why it's so important to always control the rhetoric and make sure that we're doing right by our children. I don't have children myself, but man, that doesn't mean anything to me. I mean, these kids are I
They're
feel
your
like
children,
the
yeah.
families that I serve, they're my kids because they're our future.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's pretty damn personal, if you ask me.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
I mean,
Absolutely.
it's everybody's responsibility. And I love how your story captures, I mean, I hear myself in that story.
In that story, yeah.
So, I mean,
Yeah.
just thank you for sharing that.
And do y'all
That was
want
like a bad parenting moment, guys. I felt horrible. Felt bad.
No, it's not though. It makes sense. I mean, you know, we talk about how the structure of the education system is leans towards white history, to be fair. Like it really doesn't lean towards black
Very
history. So it
Eurocentric.
makes sense. Very Eurocentric, yes.
Or the don't see color
Right.
movement.
No,
and
yeah.
just like
Yeah.
everybody's
What
the
was it? We're
same.
talking one of the articles,
Yeah.
the invisible what is it? The invisibility of racism. And I'm like, the
Oh, yeah.
invisibility of racism is only, I think, from one group because it has never been invisible to me. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so I always thought that was such an interest. Like, it was so interesting to read that. I'm like, it's not invisible to the marginalized group. Like, it's like right
Exactly.
there
Like,
all
you
the
see
time.
it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah. So I don't know, y'all. I think that's a really good place to leave it. I loved what Julia said. Do y'all want to talk a little more? Or are we good?
I think we covered it really well.
With Julia, open the floor, provide opportunities for culturally relevant opportunities.
Absolutely.
Right? Or provide opportunities for culturally relevant practice.
Uh-huh.
Can we do that?
Yes. That's perfect.
Oh, well, ladies, thank you so much.
Thank you guys.
It's
It's awesome. All right. Next time. Bye.
Okay, bye.